Hi everyone, Jack here with another video. This one is unusual. It's not the type that I tend to upload. I like to focus a bit more on like light-hearted stuff, thing that we can generally learn about, which I guess that we can do with this one, but this is not what I will generally do. So please indulge with me going through this topic because I think that is rather important, dealing with an issue that a lot of us suffer from. All this has for the longest time gone a little bit too silent. Now, this is normally something that I would have saved for, let's say, the month of May, talking about the broader topic of overall just mental illness, since that is the month that has to deal with that. But there has been this whole podcast featuring Dr. K, the YouTube psychologist, the healthy gamer, that has been floating around the internet, and I thought that it would have been a good idea to share some thoughts about them and perhaps create a discussion and hear some of the opinion that some of you have there. You'll have to excuse me if I do not upfront make use of the word proper, as it is for YouTube's sake when discussing this topic.
I know what depression looks like. I know what bipolar disorder looks like. And half the men that I've worked with, at least, are not actually mentally ill. See, mental illness means a pathology of the mind, which means that the mind is malfunctioning. Most men that I work with, their mind isn't malfunctioning. They genuinely have a life that is no longer worth living. They're looking at things and objectively realizing that there's no way out of this situation. So they turn to suicide. So I know it's kind of like a very controversial statement, but I think that's what my clinical practice has shown, and there's some research to even back that up. So if we sort of look at what's going on with men, we're sort of, they have nowhere to turn to. And the number one thing that correlates with it is not mental illness, but is a sense of thwarted belongingness. So this is kind of like multivariate regression analysis. But basically what happens is what causes people to kill themselves is they try to connect with others and they get rejected. So it's specifically a very specific research term called thwarted belongingness. So I try to belong to a group, and that group, or multiple groups usually, will thwart my attempts to join the tribe, to join the community. And this is what actually correlates a lot with suicidality. So what's going on with men right now is that we really don't allow them to suffer, because then you're not manly. And we're so externalized with our attention that we're not connecting with ourselves. And so we're looking to other people to tell us what it means to be a man.
A thing that I find to be interesting when it came to this point that he made about the 50% not having signs of mental illnesses is that it of course has to do with the fact that some do not report it. We know it's a general thing that a lot of men do not report illnesses. Just in general, it's very unfortunate, or overall just people not being diagnosed with whatever they had, nor even having had the options. As an example, I do suffer from narcolepsy, my partner has ADHD, and because we are the age where we are in, the means of figuring it out is rather accessible, yet it is somewhat on the later end. Parents, like my partner's mother, has struggled a lot to be diagnosed with ADHD, despite the fact that she quite literally has it. It is an hereditary thing. Well, this of course is not under the category of mental illness, right? We are talking about neurodivergence here, yet it is as a sort of, let's say, analogy to what can often happen when people have lived long enough with something to a certain age where they have made enough countermeasures to be able to live with whatever ails them. It becomes difficult at the older age of, let's say, 50 to show the immediate signs that are often found in younger individuals when you are being diagnosed. So that is one of the issues when it comes to this. That being said, in a study that I read regarding the northern countries and the rate of self-deletion, which luckily, following the trend across Europe, is on the decline, but when researching how these happen, I came to learn that these do occur across economical lines. There has been this weird misconception that I had, especially when I was very young, living in Africa, thinking to myself that these kind of things only occurred to the very less fortunate, right? Those who were truly poor, those who had quite literally no other resort and decided to turn towards that. But as it turns out, here in Scandinavia, even in Finland, the happiest country on earth, it continues happening. And that is regardless of you being a cashier at a grocery store, the mailman, or the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. People taking their lives does not discriminate. And even scarier was Greenland, one of the least densely populated countries on the planet, with a population of 50,000 or so individuals, and its city of Tasiilaq being one of the worst, if not the worst place on Earth when it comes to self-deletion rate. And I'm of course not using Greenland here as a case study for what is wrong or whatever should be done. No, this is simply to bring up a point that the inhabitants of this area mentioned was a huge contributor to the issue at hand, prompting the many depressions that they suffered from and the eventual death of these individuals. And that thing is loneliness. It's on the rise amongst all of us. Men, women, non-binary alike, we are all suffering from this. I remember close to the end of last year during a stream that we talked about this while watching a video by the Cold Fusion channel. And things got a tad bit emotional. And while it is not a new phenomenon per se, as it has been happening for quite some time, it is something that's being accelerated by a bunch of factors that can't exactly just being singled out. As in, we can't just blame it on social media. Yes, social media does have an effect on the loneliness that we all experience, with people watching through the lens of those media platforms how a happy and loving life is supposed to look like whenever an influencer or whomever is posting just the right photo and pasting it on their page. How the inability to sometimes discern or tackling important information and dissecting what is actually being portrayed regarding a happy and healthy life can affect young people, but all people alike. We all have heard stories about elderly in Facebook or Telegram groups believing in some very strange things. Nor can it be relegated to social-economical factors alone. We do know that it is difficult to, for example, let's say when it comes to relationship, going on a date in this economy. Things have become a lot more expensive, and not everybody is going to be engaging in going on a hike or doing something that is inexpensive. There is also the possibility that there are not any third places in one's environment. Do you have a park that you can go to meet new people? Do you have a library across you? Anything that is communal to make sure that you can have and meet new people and develop meaningful relationships. Are these amenities there to provide you with that? And what about cultural factor? Does the environment that you grew up in, or the would-be, in quotation here, baggage that you bring with you, act as an inhibitor for you to actually create relationship with others that are different from you? So we can't just single out one thing here. It becomes a good mismatch of all of these things. Yet in passing, before I get to the next point, I need to clarify something, because this has been a point that I, as an adult now, has been required to explain when having conversations with the boys, that loneliness is not the same thing as being alone. A lot of us can be alone and feel very good about it. Yet, it's not the same thing. You can be in a group, part of a family, be in a couple and still be haunted with the looming sensation of, do I belong? The question of, why am I even here? I'm clearly a hindrance to the people around me. Do they even want me here? And is this situation ever going to change? Is this sense of belonging and this sense of wanting to connect and the lack of reciprocity that we can get from people, that is so damning for many out there? And that's why one of the components to the whole thing of the male loneliness epidemic has a lot to do with the connections that we make. I can give you an example, because a lot of the things that I may be talking about will be anecdotal. It's unavoidable. I can cite some studies, but the things that really hit home are the things that I've experienced. Being in a relationship, now a long-lasting one, and even being a parent now, has opened my eyes to a lot of things that I did not quite understand when I was younger. I've grown to develop some sympathies for my parents on certain things that they did. It's life choices that they made that I quite did not understand. And to a certain extent, while I still deem that some actions were not the best, I do understand where they came from. But that has not literally anything to do with that, but more for the point that when I observe the friend groups that I have in contrast to that of my partners, I see a distinct difference. Like, if I am to look here on my Google Calendar for a little bit, one thing that I have noticed is that marked in here with green, perhaps you cannot see it correctly, those green bars there are meetings that she's supposed to be having with friends, with her homies, her crew, as she likes to call them. They will get together sometime once a month, sometime twice, talking things out and organizing things or events that they want to partake in. Now, setting up things in the calendar is of course done to make sure that we don't have scheduling issues that counter one another, but it's also indicative as to how much more structured she is making these things to make sure that she keeps those bonds, those friendships. And it's not to say that I cannot do that with the boys as well. I have friends. I'm not saying this just to say that, oh, I have friends, I can connect with people outside. Nor is it the whole, I have a lot of friends on Facebook, okay? I have an actual bunch of friends from all around the world that has shaped me and has shaped my understanding of a lot of things. Yet still, on these very 10 fingers can I count the people to whom I can turn towards and have those deep, long-lasting conversations about important stuff. What a lot of studies keep showing us is that we guys are not very good at keeping those deep, long-lasting friendships. Can we easily become friends with one another? Sure. I cannot tell you how I have met people when working on, for example, set, when filming things that were athletes like myself, where we bonded over our training, or talking about our favorite video game, our favorite sport, a dude that just knew about Dragon Ball and suddenly we're connecting to childhood memories. It's easy, but how long do you make it last? How deeper does those bonds that you create become? A lot of studies keep on showing us that we are not good at maintaining those bonds if we at all end up creating them. And thus it often happens that when your loved ones, your family, those with whom you're supposed to be having those important conversations with are not available, you turn towards your friends. And if those connections that you have supposed to have established are not there, they reject you. They do not acknowledge you. And it sucks. These are things that I have experienced, and it's literally the worst thing. People with whom I could confide in, people that came to me asking for help, that could crash on my sofa when they were going through bad times, but when I in turn was supposed to be opening up to them, they would not acknowledge me. And when a rejection like that happens from friends whom you deem to have been dear to you, you start closing in. You no longer talk about it. You start having this feeling of burdensomeness, like, oh, well, that is why they don't want to hear from me. I'm a burden to them. Would they ever care about it? You start having a bunch of speculation that leads you down a darker path where then hopelessness sets in. I am getting to this because as I have been catching up to an internet animated series, I know, completely unrelated to the subject here, but one that takes place in England, I was reminded of an ad made by the Norwich Football Club, a fan club that had this ad on about two gentlemen who were enjoying themselves across different football games. At least one of them was. The other one was rather grumpy. However, through the different sequences that were shown, the one that was super excited ended up being the one who passed away. And it was something that took me a little bit aback because that was not what was expected, a good subversion of expectation. And at the end of it all, the tagline was something akin to, I'm paraphrasing here, the signs are not always easy to see. And with the final tagline being, check in on those around you. It's one of those things that really struck me, because that's what happens when we don't talk about these things. Now, I do not precisely know where this perception of us not being able to talk about our feelings come from? Perhaps this is something from childhood where we created a bunch of rules that have now turned into axioms of facts that we just cannot question. Stuff that become absolutely unquestionable, that we do not share our feelings, that we do not cry about the things that truly ails us, where we internalize all of these things and start presenting a form of stoicism where when asked if we are doing good, we answer we're fine. And the thing is that saying that you're fine when you're not presents that everybody but you are just being better. And I know that this is only one part of the equation, being able to speak about it, as having a recipient ear is also super important. This can go all the way down to one's upbringing, one's family. Anecdotal again, for my own experience, I have had good parents. I cannot fault them for what they deem to have been right. Most parents will do their best to raise their children correctly, and given that I am where I am today, I can't but give them a credit for a lot of what they've done. However, it should never take a child, in this case me, reaching the ripe old age of 23 to first be the point where I have to face a psychologist to deal with issues that I've been internalizing for some years because I was quite literally at the edge and contemplating these thoughts. Being in a dark place where this was going to be messing with my entire life, my studies, my work, everything. And all this because of my upbringing. Because I had reached a certain point where even my own family was gaslighting me into thinking that the feelings that I had were not what they were, that I was misguided, that feeling the hurt that I was feeling was not valid because showing a certain amount of weakness was not right due to the privilege that I was given. This all due to the fact that I came from a place where we quite literally have nothing, where mental issues are not acknowledged, they are disregarded. And funnily enough, speaking here about my country of birth, this is the same place where people are believing in possessions and all kind of weird stuff. Yet still, the smallest inkling of mental issues is set aside. Except of course, the one being that you are outright crazy. These thoughts when you are young, when you're a man, when you come from a different culture, and when you have my complexion, were a wonderful cocktail of me being struck with depression. Now, this one of course not being one of the brain necessarily, but of circumstances. I just have narcolepsy, so I can deal with that. Were things that push me to the edge. And for the first time, I had to consult a psychiatrist and get on a program where I had to speak my mind. Speak about all of the childhood trauma, all of the life hindrances, the problems that I face, the challenges and all that. And I felt so elated afterwards because there was somebody to listen, somebody that would actually accept the condition that I was in and acknowledge that it was relevant. There's help to be found out there. There are friends that you can make that might not be the solution. We all know of the friend that you ask advice from that he himself have a bunch of troubles, but will say that, it'll brush over. With time, it'll be okay. That doesn't work, okay? A lot of people get into these situations because they have been contemplating these thoughts for some time already, and they don't know when that final time is going to be over. So brushing things over just easily like that doesn't work. No, you need to have those friends that are willing to take you to a professional. The ones that are willing to listen to you but know the extent of what they can do. And the same thing goes with relationships. It's important to find yourself a partner that is going to do the minimum thing of listening, acknowledging the position that you are in. And I know that it sounds like it's an impossible task nowadays because on social media, okay, because it's mostly there. They are not indicative of the whole wide of the world. There are some people who are pushing messages that we don't either need men or nor do we need women. It's not that way. We need each other. But this one gesture of acknowledging another individual, saying that the position that you are in, your lived and experience, what you feel is true and valid, gets you a long way. And because I like to keep things a little bit lighthearted, please do not feel afraid of sharing with that partner even the bad things. And I know that sometimes, especially us as guys, we have a fear of opening up because there is this thing of our weaknesses being used against us. I've experienced this in the past and it's not fun, but sometimes it is the thing that is needed to not just acknowledging the position that you are in, but also for you to grow from it. And for anything else, it can be a good thing. Like, have you ever attempted couple counseling where you are proven right? Where the psychiatrist or the counselor says that you are in the right, gives you a big fat W. Yes, I'm sorry. I have to keep things a little bit lighthearted when I'm talking about serious topics because it gets a little bit emotional. I'm making this video also because I have lost friends, family members to self-deletion because they didn't talk about it. They went with their pains. They felt that they were a burden and doing whatever they wanted to do was the better option. But aside from personal things, there have been some either subscribers or people that have reached out to me that have said and called me an inspiration. And I don't know how to deal with that. Like, the closest individual that I have considered to be an inspiration to has been my child. So I feel grateful that you would consider me as, I don't know, a role model, or at least somebody to look up to. But if anything that I can pass on to you, I guess, as a message, is that life can be shit sometimes. And I'm saying that because some of the messages have been from people who have been in like harsh circumstances. Life can be shit sometimes. But you need to know that you are worth loving, that you should be loved, and you should be listened to. Despite the harshness of it all, there is a way out. And I might not be the person providing it. You should reach out to a homie or a homette who might help you get out of that. And if not, seek for something professional. This is a hard topic to talk about, and I can feel myself like being at my limit without like starting to ramble. So yeah, these are the thoughts that I had regarding the Dr. K situation, and I'd like to know your thoughts in the comment section, how you had to deal with it, or perhaps if you want, share your story. Thank you for watching and have a great day.